Hey everyone, and welcome to another ActiveDEMAND chat presentation about features and getting started on the ActiveDEMAND platform. I'm Adriel, and I'll be hosting today's session. I'm the VP of Marketing over at ActiveDEMAND. And today's topic is getting started with ActiveDEMAND Basics. These are some of the things that I think that most companies would benefit from if they were to start up a new ActiveDEMAND account or get a new client onboarded, and they needed to kind of get the basics out of the way. So that's the idea behind this presentation. After the presentation today, we'll have a Q&A session. If you have any questions during the presentation, just go ahead and put them into the question area in GoToWebinar here, and then I'll answer them as they come, or at least all at the end. After today's presentation, we're recording it, so we'll send you the copy of the recording afterwards by email once it's ready. So without any further ado, why don't we head right into the presentation. Let's see. So generally, before I get too close here, too far in, there's a couple of different learning resources I wanted to point out. One of them is support articles. That'll be at support.activedemand.com or engage.activedemand.com. We've got lots of YouTube videos on how-tos. We've got a certification at learn.activedemand.com. So if you're going to be doing a lot of work with ActiveDEMAND, or if you're going to be doing a lot of work with clients, that certification or that LMS, the learning system, fantastic place to start because it's really well structured and really complete in how it goes over the platform. There's our blog at activedemand.com/marketing tips. And then we have monthly webinars just like this one that help to kind of walk through what you can do with the platform and some of the more popular topics. Today, we're going to be going over adding call tracking to your website, sending emails, adding web forms, some autoresponder basics, and then building drip campaigns. Kind of the idea here is that a lot of the value from a marketing automation platform like ActiveDEMAND is in getting attribution. I think that attribution means tracking what marketing results in leads or new business or new hires or whatever your goals are trying to do. It's really trying to figure out what marketing is working, and marketing automation platforms are better for this than the more general analytics like Google Analytics. So that's one of the big advantages and one of the reasons why I'm going to talk about it today. And the other part is a little bit of email and a little bit of email logic in autoresponders and drip campaigns and that kind of thing, because that also is something that marketing automation platforms do exceptionally well. I'll notably be skipping everything that's in the setup wizard that you get as you come into ActiveDEMAND. So there's that wrench in the top right that has kind of like a checklist of things to do. I'll assume that you all know the checklist and you've done the things in there. And if you haven't, it's always going to be available on the top right. So this is intended to supplement that. So the first thing is call tracking, and call tracking, adding call tracking to the website is really important because when you get traffic to your website, let's say someone comes into your website, they came in off a Google ad or whatever, and then they call. If you don't have call tracking, you don't actually get to see what made the phone ring. And in a lot of companies, a lot of B2B companies out there, even B2C companies, making the phone ring is like a big goal. That is one of the major things that people need to see as a result of marketing. So not having call tracking is like a big gaping hole in your understanding of what makes the phone ring and what causes results with the marketing. So it's really important to track for a lot of different businesses out there. So we highly encourage most companies to add call tracking to your website. Even just to get the source and understand what marketing is causing results. And the way that we do that is through something called dynamic number insertion, or DNI. It sounds fancy, but it's not that complicated. All it is different visitors to the website see different phone numbers. And when that phone number rings, and it just forwards to your regular business line or your sales line or whatever, but when that phone number rings, we can figure out who made that call, and we can figure out how they got to the website, which pages they went on, and all this other like really important stuff to understand what marketing's working, understand what pages on the website are working for us, and so on and so forth. So this is why we swap out these phone numbers and why we use dynamic number insertion. Now, the steps to enabling this on your website. First thing, you need to get the tracking code on the website. There's a few different ways of doing that. If you're on a WordPress website, the WordPress plugin is fantastic, and it'll get the tracking code on. Otherwise, if you're using Google Tag Manager, you can put the tracking code on via that. And if you just have like a regular website or something that's not WordPress that you want to put it on, there's also just adding the tracking code to a header or a template, or just ask one of your website developers to add it in, and they'll be able to add it in easily. Okay, that's step number one, and that's good. That's the actual bit of code that will do the swapping on the phone number. But next we have to figure out which phone number we want to replace. So if you have multiple phone numbers on your website, you can configure ActiveDEMAND, so it's only going to swap on the popular sales one or all of them. It's really up to you. Next, we set up a DNI group for that phone number. Basically, this is like a pool of phone numbers that are going to swap in and out for that tracked phone number that we want to track. Then we add phone numbers to the DNI pool, so you can pick and choose which phone numbers you want to use. That's important. And then add restrictions if needed. So if you have a lot of traffic, or you have a lot of traffic from countries or areas or kinds of customers that you don't want to track, you can restrict it so that the DNI only shows for the customers that you want to track. So this is what a DNI pool looks like, and basically all it is that those phone numbers on the right-hand side, those are ones that we've purchased inside the ActiveDEMAND platform. So there's like a monthly fee of whatever, like $2 or $3 or whatever the dollars they are per month, kind of a thing. Those are our track phone numbers, and those swap in for the phone numbers on the left-hand side. So that left-hand side are the non-track phone numbers. Those are just the regular business numbers. And the ones on the right are the pool ones that get swapped in or out. So this is basically all you have to do for DNI to get it working. And on the flip side, what you get out of it is you get like really good reporting on what's making the phone ring. So we can see stuff like this. So this is a phone call report that you can pull from ActiveDEMAND. This is actually one that it's a real phone call report that I used for ours. And you can see, oh, interesting. So ActiveDEMAND, an email that we sent out in terms of a campaign, it looks like that actually caused some calls into the main phone line. That's interesting. So I can take further looks into this. I can see as a split where we get phone calls from, whether they come from email or pay-per-click or organic or whatever. So this is really important, again, in fully understanding how marketing influences the business, and what marketing is working and what marketing is not working. The next thing I want to talk about is email campaigns, because a lot of people want to send email campaigns with ActiveDEMAND. Because of all the really good information that you can gather about customers and prospects, you can change the emails, you can dynamically update them, and you can target people really, really specifically. So it is a big strength of the platform. Generally, when you're thinking about doing an email, you kind of want to go through a framework. It's usually you don't get a good email when you start with, I think I need to send an email to some people. Usually you have to start with a goal, and the best emails will start with the goal and then kind of go from the top down. So we have a goal. Let's build a strategy to accomplish that goal. Let's think about our target. Who's the demographic or the persona of the customer or prospect that we're trying to target? What's the medium? Well, in this case, I mean medium's email. That's easy. Then we can start building content and creative that kind of dovetail in with the strategy and the personas that we're targeting. We can schedule a timeline and then assemble a team, or just if the team might just be yourself as well, right? So this is just like a general checklist to go through. It's good, even after you've done like 100 emails, it's still good to go through a quick little checklist like this, just to make sure that you're not accidentally sending an email for the wrong purposes, or just to make sure that you're covering your bases and following the right steps. Airline pilots, even after they've flown thousands and thousands of hours, they use a pre-flight checklist. They use a post-flight checklist, because They want to get the right result. The right result for them is getting the plane safely to the right location. And similarly for marketing, I really like using these little checklists to ensure that we get the right result when we do marketing as well. In terms of building the list, this is best if you have a target demographic for your campaign. So if you have a demographic or a persona and you've thought through that kind of stuff, that's fantastic because it means you can very specifically target them with the right message, with the right pitch. Usually the best performing email campaigns are very, very specific and use that specificity to their advantage. If you could include any additional information, so as you're building this demographic and persona up, try to think about what products or services they might be interested in with your company, what industry they're in, what their company size is, and that kind of thing. Because sometimes you need to send different emails based on those kinds of answers. Oh, if their company size is 5 and under, we're going to send this email. But if it's 100 or over, we're going to do this thing over here. So it's important to know what you need to do for each of those. Usually when you're building a list, it's going to be in CSV or Excel format. Sometimes they can be exported from your CRM. One of the things that's really nice about ActiveDEMAND, we connect with a pile of CRMs out there. So either if it's you and you're just in in-house marketing, we probably connect to your CRM. If you're a marketing agency, the advantage here is that we connect again to many clients' CRMs, and the tighter you get with their CRM, usually the better. It very nicely connects sales and marketing, and that's usually like a challenge with a lot of marketing groups out there, is making sure that they're really well connected to sales. When you're connected directly to the CRM, you can query for the kind of information that sales has, and then you can build lists on it to take action. And then the last thing that I have here, just make sure that you're considering any applicable email spam laws. So CASL if you're in Canada, GDPR if you're in the US, or CCPA for California. So these are important things to take into consideration so that you're obeying the law. Next, let's look into pulling contacts from a CRM. This can be the typical way to get contacts, is just pulling them from a CRM. If your marketing system's connected to sales, you can just tag them in the CRM and automatically pull them into the email. But let's just look at a manual one just for the sake of it. This is a pull from Pipedrive, and I could, for example, look for organizations whose industry is financial, where we haven't won a deal with them, where they're not a customer yet, they're just a prospect, and their address is Canada. This would be a good example of how you could pull a list of Canadian financial organizations that are prospects, not customers. Typically, you would export. Again, this is Pipedrive, so I've got an example of here where I can export it via CSV or Excel. Like for our purposes, these are going to do the same thing because this is just a temporary file that we're then going to load up into ActiveDEMAND. That's an example of what one of these files would look like. They might have like name, organization, email, phone, that kind of thing. And then you would just import that into Active. Now, sorry, one moment here. Before you import it, just make sure that your list is good. Some CRMs have really good data. Some CRMs, maybe the maintenance hasn't been there and the data quality is pretty poor. So make sure that the data is good. If you have a garbage list, you can't really personalize very well. So the example I have here is like first name. It's nice to be able to put someone's first name into an email, but if your number of contacts that have a first name is very low, 50% or under, I don't know that I would bother doing this. I might just use like a more generic intro. So again, make sure that you've got really good information in your list so that you can personalize both the content and the targeting on it. Next, we need to think about an email template. This is where your HTML or design skills come into play. ActiveDEMAND has some templates inside the platform that you can start with. And there's a number of different kinds of templates for different kinds of emails that you might want to send. One example might be like a one-off corporate email where you can use a pretty wide content area. Make sure you've got your unsubscribe in there, company address, all that kind of required stuff. And that might be it for the one-off. A personal from a salesperson or point of contact, I really like these. So if you have prospects that all have their own contact manager or salesperson that's attached to them, use that. Make it a personal email that looks like it's coming from the salesperson, that's coming from their email address, that is written in a very informal salesperson kind of a way. And you might see better results from something like that in some circumstances. And then another example of a different kind of email template might be a compartmentalized digest style. This is a style of email that you would use for a newsletter if you were trying to notify people about lots of different updates to your product or to your company, for example. Next, we're just going to look at how we get to the campaigns. So underneath automation campaigns, we can build out our newsletters. This is an example of like that digest style that I was talking about. So in this email that we send out to our customers and people who are on trials, you can actually see that we customize it and are able to build the email out the way that we need to. It's a what you see is what you get kind of an editor, and it's easy enough to whip these out. A couple of things that would be do's or don'ts. I would really encourage you to agonize over the subject line, because the subject line is really important for open rate. If your email shows up in someone's inbox and it's in there with 50 more other emails, the subject line is going to be what determines whether it gets opened. So definitely agonize over what that subject line is going to be. Some don'ts. I don't think that over designing an email is I've never seen an over designed email perform really well. I've seen some really good performance from like some really basic emails or just some ones that are really clean and structured. So definitely look at not over designing, and definitely don't lose sight of the goal. That's why I started off with that goal strategy concept kind of a layout, because if you lose sight of the goal, sometimes emails become like their own purpose. It's like, what's the goal with this email? Well, the goal with the email is to communicate with customers. Okay, why? And we always need to make sure, okay, what are we trying to do? Are we trying to increase retention? Are we trying to get new prospects in? What are we trying to do with this email? And then cater the email to that goal. Next, we're going to look at web forms. And web forms are important, again, if you want better attribution to know what marketing is causing results. I think that looking at some of the advantages to using ActiveDEMAND web forms, one, it gets contact data into the system, and because it's not anonymous, we get some really good stuff in there that you can't get from if I had form submits tracked with Google Analytics, for example. It's all anonymous, so I don't get to see, oh, this was like Bob from Acme, oh, that was a really good lead, or that kind of thing, right? The other things that ActiveDEMAND does, we track partial form submits. So if someone fills out like part 1 of a form and not part 2, we still get that information, so you can still choose to hand that over to sales and have sales chase up on it. You can build multi-page forms, which in some circumstances are actually really the right way of doing things, rather than having one big page with all the content and all like a million questions on it. Sometimes breaking them up into multiple pages makes sense. And then the last thing, which is probably the most powerful in ActiveDEMAND, you can take action immediately after the submit, and that action can be customized and have logic associated with it. So this is where we can start adding some of the decision making into the process, and that makes these forms very powerful. There are forms used in ActiveDEMAND landing pages. Those are called internal forms. And then there are forms that you can embed into your website, and those are called external forms. So that's the lingo difference on forms. You get to them by going through Assets Web Forms, and they look something like this, depending on how you have them set up and how you have them styled with CSS afterwards and whatnot. So there's a couple of different things that are kind of interesting about these. I'm going to click open on the right-hand side there. There's lots of different content that you can put into forms. Some of these are like pre-configured, like name, first name, last name, phone number. The pre-configured ones are kind of nice to use because they have some data validation in them that makes it so that people can't enter like garbage information for some of that stuff. So definitely use the pre-built fields in the form where possible, and then go custom where you need to. There's some more pre-built ones in there. Google CAPTCHA, if you have a bunch of junk form fills, a Google CAPTCHA is really nice for those, because it's just like the check here if you're not a robot kind of a thing. They're super easy to use, but they really stymie those robots. I don't know what kind of voodoo Google's using, but it's hard for robots to click that button. And then you can get into custom fields. And the custom fields are really where you customize the ActiveDEMAND platform to your business. And these are very powerful because you can then take different action based on these afterwards. So this is, again, where you customize the platform to your business so that you can take action on these kinds of things afterwards. These are arguably like some of the most interesting questions to add to a form. Like adding like a product of interest or role or something like that. These are like the gold nuggets of detail and information that you can use to take action afterwards. Now, one thing to think about is what happens after someone fills out a form. There's a couple of different options. You can redirect them to a confirmation page as an option, or you can display something in place, like a line or something like that. A couple different options on that side just to think about. When you're inserting web forms, if you're using WordPress, boy, that's easy. There's a WordPress plugin, makes it easy for you to add forms into any page. Otherwise, there's a shortcode, and there's also the capability to just add them in via HTML and CSS. So there's some really easy ways to use this, and there's some more advanced ways. If you have developers on staff and they know what they're doing, you can definitely get them to style these forms the way that you want to match the rest of the website. Yeah, there's an example of some HTML. Some tips about using web forms. One of them is maybe don't use a web form. So if you're actually trying, if the customer is actually trying to book an appointment with you, use an appointment scheduler. Like our appointment schedulers in ActiveDEMAND are really slick, and it is a better quality lead. Like if I look at a lot of customers that we have that have both like a contact us generic form and appointment scheduling, the appointment schedule, like the appointment fills are such good quality because they're a customer who is interested and wanted a time or a date to talk about the product, talk about the potential solution. So consider using the appointment scheduler if you're actually trying to get the customer to book a meeting. Just let them book direct. Build your custom fields before building your form. So try to think about what custom fields you need. Go into the administration section of ActiveDEMAND and build those custom fields out first. And then consider that the form will update the contact if it exists, or create a new one if they don't. And again, just use those pre-made fields where possible. Don't reinvent the wheel. Like you don't need to make a custom field for name. There's already one built into ActiveDEMAND, and it works with the built-in fields as well. So now that we have a form, we can think about what happens afterwards. After they fill in that form, what are we going to do? And that's what autoresponders are. They're little blocks of logic that you can add that happen after someone fills in a form. So they're called autoresponders because the most typical use of them is to automatically send something to a prospect. Say, thanks for requesting a quote. Our typical turnaround times for quotes is 24 business hours, so or 24 hours. So if you fill it in, we'll get back to you the next day. That's a very typical responder for someone filling out a form. And some companies use these, and some companies don't. But this is just getting started. This is like just table stakes kind of a thing. We can do things that are a lot more interesting because we can do decisions in here. So let's say we had a form and they said whether they were interested in delivery services or not. Well, we can actually put a little block of logic in here that changes what happens based on that information, based on what we learned about the prospect. And we can also change based on what we already knew about the prospect if they had been to our website before. So we can do some really interesting logic here that does some more advanced things that helps to get the customer or get the prospect further along the sales cycle than they normally would be able to get. Like a real simple example here, interested in delivery services? If yes, follow the green line, then we'll send them the email that's specific on delivery services. And if no, we'll send them the one on training services. So this is an example of changing that logic based on how they filled in the form. Why don't we look at an example that's a little bit fancier than this though? What if that form was a feedback form? And the form had a 1 to 5 stars. What would you rate us, 1 to 5 stars? Well, why don't we take it a decision based on that? Did they rate us 5 stars? And if they didn't, maybe I'm going to take note in the CRM for support to follow up. Hey, this customer doesn't look very happy. Can you follow up and see what's going on? That would be what, again, I decided this once upon a time, and now the system takes care of it afterwards. But what if they did rate us 5 stars? Well, if they rated us 5 stars, I would like them to review us on Google or Yelp. So let's send them an email that asks them to review us on Google or Yelp. And then we'll wait a week. And after that 1 week, we can't actually see if they reviewed us on Yelp because we're not connected to that system. But I can see if they clicked on the link. And if they didn't click on the link, I'll follow the red line there, and I'll ask for a review once more. And if they did click on the link, maybe I'd say, hey, thanks for reviewing us. So this is just a quick and dirty example of what you can do with a little bit of logic. And this is, again, when you get consistency and you get it to happen all the time, something that's really great for getting consistent results, which in this case would be more reviews. You're always trying to get like real customer reviews on Google and Yelp for a lot of different businesses out there. It's hard. But it's a lot easier when you're doing it on a consistent manner, just like this. The next thing I want to look at is drip campaigns, drip or nurture campaigns. These are typically like emails that you send to customers over time. These help prospects down the sales funnel. You typically use timing based on when the prospect entered the campaign. Really nice for consistency. When you have multiple people that are doing the same task differently and they put their own personal flair on it, but it's not really needed, automating it is one way of really ramping up consistency. And these are really good for repetitive marketing tasks, such as quarterly surveys or a post-sale introduction. What do you do after the sale is won? So I'm just going to show you a couple of quick examples of some drip or nurture campaigns that we would recommend. The first one is recovering an unresponsive prospect, a prospect that maybe sales has tried talking to. They called them 3 times, they emailed them 3 times, and the prospect's ghosting them. So we need to try to get them back. Most sales organizations, most groups inside of an organization that are responsible for sales will have some process for this. We email 3 times, then we call 3 times, and then that's it, we're done. The advantage with getting automation to do it is that you can do more. You can have more chances, you can follow up more often, you can do it over a longer period of time. So that's why you'd use a program like this or a drip like this. So with this one, for example, we trigger the user in, wait 2 days, send them email 1, check if they did something that was interesting to us, email again, wait again, and just do the automation that we need to here. It's important to think about what exit criteria you want to have. So make sure you're considering, hey, what happens if they unsubscribe? What happens if they reply to an email? What happens if they call? And just consider those and consider what you want this campaign to do. In most of those circumstances, if you want people to be able to exit easily, I would recommend in the just underneath the overview tab there's an option for kick them out when they complete a goal. I would check that box, and then it would add those conditions as goals. So if they call in, kick them out of the campaign. If they reply to an email, kick them out of the campaign. Because the whole idea with this campaign is to get them to do something. So just consider those and look at potentially putting them in as goals. Just some different tips and tricks on drip and nurture campaigns. First, establish your goals first. Make sure you have those before you build the drip campaign. Otherwise, measurement and direction might get a little bit muddy, might get a little bit weird. Find internal subject matter experts, or SMEs, to ask about the timing or the number of times to reach out. Sometimes it's best to, if you're going to do that campaign that I just showed there, steal the best ideas from sales. Like, go talk to sales about what they send in those circumstances, and then just grab that content. Marketing doesn't have to write all this stuff from scratch. You can sometimes get it from the people who know the best. So those are just, again, some really quick tips on drip or nurture campaigns. Finally, to learn more about ActiveDEMAND, I've got a couple of links in here. This presentation is going to be available afterwards in video format, so if you need to, you can grab from there. A lot of this kind of stuff is, again, on that learning management system that we have, or ActiveDEMAND Academy. That's where you'll find information on email campaigns, web forms, call tracking numbers, and it's really, really complete. This is just kind of a breeze over what I would recommend most people start with an ActiveDEMAND campaign. But again, if you want the full kit and caboodle, head on over to learn.activedemand.com. And there's a couple of YouTube videos we have here as well, and those are also embedded in the learn.activedemand, so you can get that to them from there. And I think that's about it. So let me know if you have any questions. Just pop them into that questions area on the side of GoToWebinar there, and I'll be happy to answer them. And otherwise, I'll hang around for about 5 minutes here.